Welcome everybody to today's TAFETalks. This is a special event honouring International Women's Day, which is held on the 8th of March. I'm Teresa Schmidt, the Director of Policy and Governance at TAFE Directors Australia, and today's topic is the power of TAFE and industry to march forward towards gender parity. So Wanya, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of all the different lands upon which we meet today. I'm coming to you today from Gubbi Gubbi country, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders past and present and to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who join us in the discussion today. If you would like to introduce yourself and acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands that you are on, please feel free to do so in the chat. So Wanya Nullam, welcome to you all. The United Nations theme for International Women's Day 2025 is March Forward for All Women and Girls. This year's theme commemorates 30 years since the world committed to gender equality through the Beijing Declaration and the Platform for Action. Although we are making progress, we're not yet where we need to be. In today's session, we will discuss ways in which TAFE and industry can help to progress equality in Australia and worldwide. We will hear from a panel of inspiring women to learn about the challenges that they have faced and how they've overcome them. We'll also discuss the positive changes that they've seen, the factors that enable gender parity, and what still needs to be done to march forward. So let me begin by introducing our panel. So firstly, I have Jenny Butler, Chief Academic Officer of TAFE Queensland. Jenny Butler has worked in vocational education and training for over 29 years. She's been an educator, a senior manager, an executive director, and a general manager. Jenny is now the Chief Academic Officer at TAFE Queensland, and she's passionate about making TAFE Queensland a place where everyone feels welcome and supported. She works hard to ensure that there's no discrimination and that everybody has equal opportunities. Jenny is an inspiring role model who is committed to developing her team, nurturing future leaders within the organisation so that they too may continue TAFE Queensland's proud legacy in servicing the training needs of the state long into the future. Her personal and professional experiences provide valuable insights as we work towards a more sustainable and fair future. Welcome, Jenny, and thank you for joining us. Joining us also is Sharon Robertson, Chief Executive Officer of Manufacturing Industry Skills Alliance. Sharon is the CEO of the Manufacturing Industry Skills Alliance, an industry-owned and industry-led organisation operating as the Jobs and Skills Council for the manufacturing sector. The Manufacturing Alliance works in partnership with industry, governments, unions, employers and training providers to find solutions to the skills and workforce challenges that industry faces. Sharon is also chair of the Tuition Protection Services Advisory Board, and prior to this, Sharon led organisations responsible for various industry engagement arrangements, including the IBSA Group, the SSO for the manufacturing industry, and its predecessor, the Industry Skills Council. Sharon's experience in vocational education and training systems dates back to 2004. She held several key executive positions, including Executive Director of VetAssess, an Australian vocational and education training provider, providing assessment solutions and systems to clients nationally and offshore. And she was head of the National Advisory for Tertiary Education, Skills and Employment, the Commonwealth Agency providing policy advice, and a secretariat service to COAG Standing Council. Sharon's worked with state and federal governments on policy development, review and evaluation, which is focused on education and training. Welcome, Sharon. Also on our panel today is Dr. Janine Brederhoft, the CEO of Science in Australia Gender Equity, SAGE. SAGE is Australasia's leading advocate for equity, diversity and inclusion in the education and research sector. As an economist, Janine specialised in analysing international academic labour markets and was a leader in the Australia Workplace Gender Equality Agency, the WGEA, before she joined SAGE. As a champion of evidence-based data-driven solutions, Janine is committed to addressing intersectional inequalities and has earned the trust of leaders and the wider community. Welcome, Janine, and thank you for joining us. And also joining us today, and you will have noticed, coming just really as sometimes we don't always have the technology working well, but we still came up with a solution. So really happy to see you here, Leanne Kell, electrician and ACT Apprentice of the Year 2024 from the Canberra Institute of Technology. After completing a Bachelor of Commerce and becoming a mother to 2 girls, Leanne decided to redirect her career. She was drawn to the electrical trades because she felt her mathematical skills would come in handy, which they did. Leanne tested the waters by completing her Certificate 2 in Electrotechnology, and then she went on to complete a Certificate 3, becoming an electrician at the Canberra Institute of Technology as a mature age apprentice. Leanne is now a qualified electrician. As part of her career change, Leanne wanted to demonstrate to her daughters that work can be enjoyable, that it's never too late to learn, and that careers don't have gender boundaries. Not only has she successfully demonstrated all these possibilities to her children, but also to everyone she crosses paths with. And changing careers can be challenging, of course, but Leanne recognised that a trade apprenticeship was a great solution. It's allowed her to learn the right skills while earning an income to support her family. Outside of work, Leanne loves to spend time with her family, and she enjoys woodwork, travelling and community projects. And we are very pleased that you were able to join us here today, Leanne. Thank you. So thank you to all of our panellists. So I'll now go through the way that we'll ask these panellists some very important questions. Before I do, though, I want to let you know that today's session is being recorded, and the recording will be made available to everyone who registered for this TAFETalks session and on the TDA website. Closed captioning is also available for this event. If you have any questions that you would like to pose to our speakers, please use the Q&A box throughout the session, and we'll come back to those at the end. You can use the chat, which I can see you've already worked out. You can use the chat for discussion during the session. We won't be able to monitor that all the time for questions, so please use the Q&A for your important questions. So it now gives me great pleasure to kick off our discussion with our first question. The Commonwealth Government's recently released its strategic review of the Australian Apprenticeship Incentive System. The review recommends improving workplace culture, making the case that by improving the culture for women, this will improve the workplace for everybody. So I'm going to ask the panel now to answer this question. Tell us about some of the main barriers and challenges you have experienced as a woman entering the workforce and building your career, and how did you deal with these? So I'll start with Sharon. Just putting you on the spot now, Sharon. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa, and thank you for the opportunity. It's great to be here with some amazing women, and I really appreciate the amount of people that have joined us online. I won't go through a lot. I just thought I'd pick out one experience that I reflect on. I used to say in my current role, I've spent many years in very much a male-dominated workforce, and as many of you would be aware, the manufacturing workforce has a very significant gender skew, with women representing about 30% of the workforce. Unfortunately, or fortunately, that's not been dissimilar from other roles that I've held too. Working for over a decade in a large accounting advisory firm, I can still remember as a 30-year-old woman leading many consultations across Australia in an area of which I considered myself as a bit of an expert. However, unfortunately, participants ignored my presence and spoke to my colleague, who was grey-haired and, more importantly, male. How have I dealt with that challenge? And I'm sure others have experienced that themselves. quite simply, unfortunately or fortunately, has been my own resolve, where I've continued to participate in the discussions and put to one side the bias in the consultation. This has also been, I think, on a positive note, one of the key motivators for me to do more and try harder to enable that equality that's needed in male-dominated workforces. Currently, one of the projects that we've currently got on foot for the manufacturing sector is to actually really look at some of the great work that's out there at the moment. There's been some fantastic literature written. There's been a number of projects, and I think there was 3 more announced yesterday in advanced manufacturing space, to really try and identify what are the challenges that have already been identified, and but more importantly, where have the successes been? Because really, I'd like to use the opportunity to get behind those successes, leverage those, and really promulgate the best practice that's been identified. So just a little plug while I can, Teresa. If you're aware, as I'm sure there's many stories out there of some great successes or challenges, we'd love to know about it. It's on foot at the moment. And hello@manufacturingalliance.org.au. Please reach out, because we really would like to capture as many great stories as possible. I'll stop there, Teresa, confident that you want to share it with others.
Thanks, Sharon. All right, well, that was an interesting account of Sharon's experience in a very gender biased workforce, but some ways of overcoming those challenges, and also looking forward to what we might do in the future. So interesting to hear about that project, and looking forward to seeing that come to fruition, Sharon. I'm now going to pass to Jenny Butler to talk about Jenny's perspective on this.
Thanks, Teresa. Interesting. As a tradesperson myself, I didn't actually experience gender bias similar to Sharon experienced, but I didn't really experience that until I was in my late 20s, early 30s. And it was when I undertook 2 different roles at TAFE Queensland, and it was actually leading a leadership role in the traditional trades area with, teams of 60 to 70, predominantly men, with maybe 2 or 3 women thrown in there. And it was interesting going into those roles, having been in my own trade for 15 years. One of the things that I would get asked consistently was, insert whatever trade is, what would you know about that particular sector? And it appeared to me that it was a mix of, the stigma of being a hairdresser, but also being a young woman moving into leadership. So it took me a little while, but I soon realized that I didn't need to have that level of expertise, because I would say to them, that's why I have you. You're the industry expert. But what I had to demonstrate that I actually understood the role that I was doing. So I needed to ensure that I was confident in my ability to perform my role, but also that I actually was competent in my ability to perform that. Because look, the reality was, I know many of them would have preferred to possibly have a male that may have come from their trade. So I wouldn't say it had a negative impact on me. It actually drove me to be a lot stronger and more resilient and determined to progress within my career. But I was only able to achieve that because of the strong leadership of women that were around me. I had smart, strong, compassionate women leaders throughout my whole career. So I've been fortunate, is the word I would say. But it's also about having that visibility, because I could see that leadership. And it's an example of it is in our own organisation at the minute. 5 of our 8 board members are women. We have 30% of our executive team across TAFE Queensland are women. So that is an example of an organisation that is displaying and showing the actions of what we believe in. But also, on a personal note, I actually had really strong networks, really strong friends. My family were really supportive. I had mentors around me. But it's good to have those, but you also need to have those people that challenge you to do better. So from that perspective, they're the reason I've been able to progress where I have, because I've had that support, but I've also had people that have actually challenged me in regards to that. And you touched on it in my bio, is The other thing that we do really well here is, like, within our own social and environmental sustainability action plan here at TAFE Queensland, we've actually got new training models aimed at supporting and encouraging women to pursue careers in male-dominated industries. We have emerging leader programs, we call them GOAL, aspiring people going into that. As an organisation, we're super proud in 2022 that we actually became a White Ribbon accredited workplace. And I mean, they're things that show all of our organisation that we value what women bring, but it's also our ability to get involved to create an environment that is inclusive of everybody. So thanks.
Thanks, Jenny. Really some interesting insights there from a slightly different perspective and workplace, but and personal ways of addressing those challenges. Now, I'm quite sure Janine has got something to say on this question, and I'm going to pass to you now, Janine. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. Really interesting stories so far. I am German, so I immigrated in 2006. But so my start to my career, when you ask, what were the challenges, I went right back to where I started my career, and that was actually as a nurse in Germany. And in Germany, nursing is an apprenticeship. But then I thought about, why did I even do the nursing? And I remembered, and just there was nowhere in my career or in school and in the time that actually alerted me to I could do engineering, or I could do something other than a marine biologist. I grew up in this small farm on country in regional Germany. My trajectory was always female dominated from the start, which is interesting when you reflect and looking in where I'm working now. So as a nurse, the good thing in the apprenticeship in nursing was that I was able to get a student accommodation and it was very cheap. So that meant I could get out of the region and out of my village and enjoy city life. So I think that has really provided me with a career pathway, that I have had. I went then on to study, and I studied health initially, but then it went on to study economics. And through that, I went to Australia, did a PhD, had children. But the other part as well was the flexibility as a parent. That was a real barrier for me, even as a PhD student. I remember that my first co-supervisor said to me, no, you cannot bring your child to a meeting. You have to be present in certain lectures and And I went out, crying and in tears of this wasn't what I expected and what I had thought would be available for a PhD study. So, well, I took the shortcut and changed supervisor, which prevented me from, which then meant I could do it all online and, could bring my baby to a meeting. And then I guess, as I said in my bio, I went to work for the WGA, which was very fortunate. But there as well, the career progression was something that I struggled with as well, because I was a sort of an APS6, I don't know, like a researcher there. And the role of the executive came up, and the role was data and research. And I read the job application. I was like, I can do this. I had a PhD by the time, and or almost a PhD. I had studied statistics and things. But the job application itself, how it was framed, I wasn't the perfect fit because I didn't have the deep data knowledge that sort of was indicated. However, I did my research, and in all other data roles, you don't need that in-depth data work. You need a basic understanding of data and interpretation and research, and I totally had that. So I went for, and I got almost laughed at when I said, I'm going to apply for this job. They're like, you? Like, yeah, I can do it. And I was successful. I led the team, and I think I was the first. I really worked on the pay transparency campaign and made that all work in policies and in the system. As now we've seen just yesterday, the gender pay gaps per organizations being shared. So yeah, that was a bit of the three things that I thought I'd share for my career trajectory.
Thanks, Janine. That experience, even though you talk about that you've talked about in Germany, and then and even the work that you've done in Australia, I don't think it would be far different for people reflecting on our experience in this country or in others. So yeah, really, really interesting insights. Thank you. Now, Leanne, I can see that you've been able to come back in, and hopefully your internet will be kind to you, because when I had an initial conversation with you about this topic, you told me some interesting things about your pathway into gaining an apprenticeship. So
well, thank you so much for having me. And I'm sorry about all the technical difficulties I'm having today. So my journey, I came into a trade later in life after going through university and having a career, and then having children. And my biggest hurdle was trying to actually gain employment. So to do an electrical apprenticeship, you have to have an employer to support you. I applied for what felt like hundreds of jobs, and I'd like to say I got rejection letters, but I got radio silence. And that was the hardest thing to overcome. I never knew where I stood. I thought I did everything I was told to. I'd updated my CV correctly. I was doing ring ups and calls trying to get a hold of managers and anyone that could make the decision to have a chat, and just no one would take my call. No one would respond to me. So that was a really hard thing to overcome. I did end up, I actually started doing my Cert 2 before I was looking for a job, but then I gained as many what we call tickets as I could as possible. So working with asbestos, working at heights, your construction white card, anything that I could that would make me more employable. And I ended up just speaking to absolutely everyone that I walked past and said, do you have an electrician? Could you talk to them for me? Just get the word out that I'm looking for a job. And I ended up getting a job that way through someone that I went to university with. She got in touch with her electrician, who said, yep, get her to give me a call. And it just worked out perfectly. He lived in the next suburb. His kids were the same age as my kids. We had actually been to a couple of the same schools as we were growing up. And I had the best employment experience that I could ask for when I worked for him. Sadly, he did have to close down his business. So I was back to the beginning, where I had to look for another job and had the same hurdle again.
So unfortunately, we've lost Leanne at the in the middle of her very interesting story, but if we can get her back, we'll hear the rest of that. I could see Sharon and Janine were probably very madly taking notes for their projects. Yes, thank you. What we'll do is we'll go on to the next question. And if Leanne joins us and she's got good internet, we'll hear some more insights from Leanne later. It's a really interesting story. Okay, so the second, I want to give you a bit of a prelude to this question. So we've been working towards gender equity and wage parity for decades now. However, Workplace Gender Equality Agency, so WGEA, the organisation that Janine used to work for, 2023 to 2024 scorecard shows mixed progress. So in terms of the gender pay gap in Australia, for every dollar that a man earns, a woman earns only 78 cents. On average, this equates to approximately $28,500 less each year. So, but on a brighter note, the number of employers who have policies or strategies to support gender equality and who have analysed and taken action to address gender pay gaps is increasing. So I want to hear from the panel now on the progress that they've seen and experienced in relation to gender equality over the course of their life and work. And I'm going to throw to Jenny first. Thank you.
Thanks, Teresa. And Leanne, you're back with us. So I'm going to pause myself, and because your story is awesome. There's resilience right there. So I'll hand back to you.
Are we continuing on with the next question? Is that
I think we're going to
where we're
continue
going?
on with your fabulous story.
Okay.
Yeah, we want to
with my story. All right, so I think I dropped out when I said that my employer closed down and I had to find a new job. So I was lucky enough to find something fairly quickly. It wasn't necessarily the right role for me, but it was one that I could run with to get me through my apprenticeship. So my next hurdles that I suppose I had was at TAFE, there was a couple of teachers that had the very old school view still that women don't belong in trades, and that was extremely unfortunate. But I had a whole support network in my class, and I actually had students make complaints about him on my behalf and stood up for me. And he wasn't around much longer, I have to say. So that was great to know that I had support there. I found in the new role, my next problem was working with a lot of younger male employees, again, being the only female, but I was the same age as a lot of their mothers, which then meant they looked at me as a mother figure and not as an equal. So that was a big hurdle to overcome. And they also expressed a lot what they thought were doing the right thing in chivalry, where they'd offer to do everything for me. And that didn't help me either, because they still believed that they could do it and I couldn't. So I really had to make an effort and push back, but people also find it rude when you say, no, you don't want their help. So it's just finding the right balance in communicating with people and letting them know that you are their equal and you should be doing everything that they're doing. Since then, I've actually stepped back from work for a little bit for family reasons. And I've found that my current hurdle is trying to find the work-life balance with working part-time with children and being a female, again, trying to find another job. It's a lot more difficult to find a part-time employer when you don't have the years of experience behind you. And I'm only coming in as freshly qualified. I'm basically a fourth-year apprentice. People don't want to give you part-time. They want you working full-time. So that is my current challenge, is trying to work out how I'm going to move forward with this career, because I don't want to give it up, but getting the work-life balance. Yeah.
Thanks, Leanne. That's yeah, we're going to, hopefully your internet will remain.
Hopefully.
Yeah, we'll come back to you for some more insights as well, because your story has, it's really resonated with so many people, and it's very interesting. It's a true account of exactly what you've been through and how you've overcome it to come out on top, and but still battling, still a challenge.
Forever.
Yeah. And you also gave Jenny a little bit of reprieve there, because she was the first person on the spot to answer the second question. And I'll just go through that again because Leanne didn't hear it. So what progress have you seen and experienced in relation to gender equality in your life and work, Jenny?
Yeah, thanks, Teresa. So look, I think we've all seen in the last 30 years the significant increase of awareness of advocacy around gender equality, like the Me Too movement, the introduction of laws and policies, including legislation, and I think that is a great step forward. But to your point, we've still got quite a bit of work to do, but I'm going to draw on some statistics that we're really proud of here at TAFE Queensland to show that if you actually actively work towards it, you can make a difference. Be it that it's a bit of a time, but our 2024 Equity and Diversity Audit found that our workforce gender representation was 62.15% women. 54.6 women were in leadership roles. So 54.6% were leadership roles. And there was 62% in the frontline and support workforce, predominantly were women. But this is the bit I'm super proud of, is we had an impressive gender gap of 2.6% of average of annual earnings. So to give people a comparison, the Bureau of Statistics in November 2024, they said that the gender pay gap was 11.9. And as I said, ours was 2.16. So it's not perfect, but they are the ways in which we can move forward. And the way we also measure it is the employee engagement survey in 2023. We found 82% of our female workforce were highly engaged in work. 84% considered TAFE Queensland to be an inclusive workplace, and 86% of the workforce represented that they believed we valued diversity. So I know that's a lot of statistics, but the point that we're making is we've been able to achieve this by having initiatives in place like employee reproductive health leave policy, or accessing working from home, or accessing flexible working arrangements. And Leanne touched on the challenge she's having as a tradie and a mother. It's also in getting involved in acknowledgement of days and weeks like today, and actually celebrating those within our workforce. And there's many others, and too numerous to mention, but they're examples of when you do that, small amounts, and having that culture where it's important to talk about and important to get involved, it will make a difference, and you'll be able to measure that within your organisation. So that's been my observations here at TAFE Queensland over the last 29 years.
Thanks, Jenny. And I'm glad we heard the end of Leanne's story, because it looks like she's lost her internet again, and we would have been really disappointed if we didn't hear the last part of that. So she might join us again. I'm going to now pass to Sharon to have just to talk about your perspective on that question, Sharon, about the progress that you've seen and experienced, so in relation to gender equality in your life and work.
Sure, thanks, Teresa. And yeah, Leanne's story. I'm reading what I was about to say. I thought, oh, actually, Leanne's would be pleased to hear it. But really quickly, I'm positive. It's been really pleasing to see the growing number of female leaders in the manufacturing sector, whilst they're not the numbers that Jenny has called out for TAFE Queensland, which is fantastic. There's some really amazing individuals, CEOs in the manufacturing space. Rebecca Andrews, as we know, Jenny, Manufacturing Skills Queensland. Ali Davenport is the CEO for Queensland Manufacturing Industry. Georgette Elston is one of the chiefs in BAE Systems. So they're amazing individuals, and their contribution to that sector is second to none. Equally too, look, the Jobs and Skills Councils, there's 10 JSC CEOs, which I'm one of them. Pleased to say that 5 of us are female, which is fantastic. And whilst it's a male-dominated industry in many of the areas that we represent, it's great to see that we do have that gender equality across the JSC network. Equally, and I just spent 1 minute looking at some of the early findings of that project I referred to earlier, and a lot of that you'll see. I could have just rung Leanne and asked her, and she probably would have told me. But the barriers for women's participation we've found so far, multifaceted, but unfortunately begin with the traditional perceptions of manufacturing and social norms, i.e. women's role in society. That's actually one of the things that people are pointing us to. And whilst there's been a lot focus on recruitment, retention is probably more of an issue. Women aren't staying in the manufacturing sector. So again, what Leanne was just talking about. And finally, whilst things like mentoring has been a solution, what we're finding is that the more significant issues that people are reporting to us around flexibility of hours and impacts on caring responsibilities, access to amenities, and freedom from harassment and casual sexism, which are all critical to keeping women in traditionally male industries, including manufacturing and obviously electrical. The outcomes of these interventions is the other thing, which is why we're doing this work, as we often don't, we're reinventing the wheel. And there's a lot of work happening out there, and we're not building on or expanding on what's worked. And it's hard to see what might be scalable is the other thing too. So, Teresa, I'll just leave it there because I'm conscious of time.
Still on mute, Teresa.
Thanks, Sharon. That was a great addition, and building upon the conversation that we had with Leanne and also Jenny's statistics there from TAFE Queensland. So interesting. Now I'm going to pass to Janine. So Janine, what progress have you seen and experienced in relation to gender equality in your life and work?
Look, I was going to say workplace flexibility is a key progress, but when I heard Leanne's story, I'm not so sure anymore, particularly in those with part-time roles. So I do think that COVID, and we've seen a lot of flexibility, but probably most likely all those progress that we have seen was in white-collar jobs, not so much in blue-collar jobs. And sort of frontline jobs, they still struggle with what sort of flexible working they can offer, and some are being more creative than others. And I think we need more creativity there as a workplace. I was also going to say parental leave. We've made great progress, like over the years with the government incentives and the government scheme and workplaces that offer parental leave. However, again, it's often women and mothers who take it off. We have not seen that big of a shift in men taking those parental leave. So, and workplaces, particularly if they're small or medium, I don't think we have the culture yet that men take parental leave. And also noting that Australia still has one of the least least generous parental leave scheme compared to Germany, for example, where people get 12 months at full pay and 2 months or 4 months have to be taken by the second parent, so to speak, or by the other parent. Also, I was going to say we've done a lot, and similar to what has been said before, we've done a lot on recruitment, and we've started role modeling, and there's a lot of women out there. Have we done the same for career progression and retention? Because I think we still have a really, really big leaking pipeline. And I don't know, seeing Leanne's story there again, like it shouts out, well, what can we do? How can we help employers enable hiring part-time employees? And I don't have the answer to that, but I think that's what we need. I was also encouraged to see, of course, the gender pay gap. 56% of organizations have reduced the gender pay gap. It's a start, and we only see that because of pay transparency, though that's also a really big win. And the other part, which I love to see, is as well more and more employers actually consult with their employees, because I think that is a major, major hurdle that, we have to ask the people that we work with, our employees, to say what they need and what they want in order for them to be most productive and motivated to work. And I think that has also increased in the data. I'm not sure about the rest, but I think if we talk to our employees, and if we only talk to Leanne, like she would bring everything she can in the part-time, in the time she has available, probably as much as a full-time employee. Anyway, that's sort of my reflection. Thanks, Therese.
Thanks, Janine. I tell you what, Leanne, by the end of this, I'm sure you're going to have employers saying, come and work for us part-time. We're all cheering for you. Thank you. Now, Janine, you touched on, some of the workforce shortages and some of the gendered workforce issues as well there. And we know that, and Sharon, you're working in an area which has some extreme workforce shortages. And we know that these workforce shortages are most often associated with professions that are with the most gendered workforce. So according to NCVER and the Commonwealth Strategic Review into Apprenticeships, which was just released recently, the number of women commencing in male-dominated trades has increased, but by less than 2 percentage points over the 4-year period between 2019 and 2023, and only in some trades. So we're making some progress, but we've heard some real life stories today about perhaps why we need to move it along a little bit more quickly and robustly. So I'm going to ask the panel now, and this is generally from your perspective, what is needed in order to march forward? What do we need? And I know we just heard from you, Janine, but this might be a good time for you to follow on. I'm going to ask you first, what are the solutions from your perspective, or where are we?
Yeah, I really like the question, what is needed to march forward? And there's two things that spring to my mind. And first is, to march forward, we have to look back, and to look back and what actually work and reflect and sort of take stock. And I think that's what the panelists today have done, which is interesting to hear. So learn from our mistakes and identify to success, particularly in times of backlash that we have in the moment. I don't think we can stop on this course. We've done great work. We need to continue on that trajectory. We are values focused, and it's worth to fight for fairness and equity here. But also I thought marching is something you never do alone. So I am, and we at Sage as well, we're very collaborative and partnerships. I think we can only move the dial further if we work together in partnerships and in collaborations with industry, education bodies, and sort of universities that we at Sage work with, and help each other out and learn from our successes and learn from what works and continue learning on that pathway and breaking the silos sort of between us, between and everyone. Oh.
Thanks, Janine. Okay, so I think what we should do now is move to, so Janine's presented a few strategies there. Leanne, we keep going back to your story. Maybe now is an opportunity for you to tell us, what do you think's needed? What do we need to do?
I know there's work already being done in this area, but I think we need more of a push in years 11 and 12 to encourage females to jump in when they're young. It is the better time to start doing a trade if you want to jump into that area. But more importantly, we need to shift the focus and the message being sent that a trade is a fallback career. If you're not good enough for uni, then you do a trade. That's not true. I did uni and I've ended up in a trade, and I love the trade, and I wish I'd found it earlier. So we really need to shift the message and the meaning, and all jobs, no matter how you get to it, are equally important. And it shouldn't be sold that trades are for the less intelligent, because they are not. There's so many intelligent people in it. It's more often those that struggle with traditional classroom learning that are in a trade, but it doesn't have to be that way. Anyone can do one.
Thanks, Leanne. That's yes, that is exactly what we need to dial up that that experience, and to learn from the experience that you've had. It's not just about the trade; it's actually about how we're perceiving the trade itself and the difference in the qualifications. So really important, some very important insights there, which I'm pretty sure Janine and Sharon were taking notes on again. So thank you. Sharon, I'm going to ask now for your perspective on that. What do you think is needed in order to march forward?
Sorry, everything Leanne said. No, Leanne, that was excellent. And it's the people who've got the lived experience that really know the answers to this. So my perspective on this is second to Leanne. So I would just like to say that first. But unfortunately, my view is it's not a quick fix. I mean, as we know, we've been trying to enable that gender equality against all aspects of our world for so long now. It's a multi-generational problem, but it is achievable, and we've seen some great movement already, but we need to keep focused. So it's a call to action, the march forward, as you rightly suggested, Teresa, and that's what it means to me, is it's that call to action, and we can't just, I suppose, go, okay, we got partway there, that'll do, so to speak. The conversations need to keep going like today's, and we need to be ready to act. We need to go, in my view, beyond the piecemeal project-based funding approach. It was great to see there was lots of projects announced even yesterday from the federal government regarding building women's careers. However, and I'm not going to diminish the projects that are being undertaken. The comment I'd like to make is to highlight that shifting the dial in this way is too slow. Too vulnerable to the whims of policy, and not lifting or shifting the cultural and structural barriers quickly enough. To meet the increasing demand for the manufacturing sector in particular, obviously, which is what I've focused on, there needs to be actionable goals, targets, and guidance. And those targets need to be applied across the full range of manufacturing settings. That call to action needs to be put at people's feet, and we need to be given the opportunity to respond. And I think without that, we're going to continue to go slow, and we're going to continue to hear stories like we've heard today, where it's really not good enough. So I think we need to continue to march forward.
Thanks, Sharon. Okay, so that, yeah, I think we definitely need to march forward. And as you said, we're taking a little bit too long to do it at times. So we need to do it a little more quickly. Jenny, your perspective on this question.
Yeah, and I agree with all of the panelists' comments, and I want to revisit the schools. I 100% agree with Leanne, but I'll go a step further. It's not an education piece for the young person. It's actually an education piece for those that are actually advising that young person. And I think everybody is well intended, and we all want the best for the young person, and that they want them to be happy, healthy, and have a great life. But it's about some of the people that are advising them, one, have never been experienced the particular sector, or they actually have come from wanting, you know, that expectation of, well, you've got to go to uni to get this. And I think the education piece that we all have a responsibility for, and I mean schools, vet sector and the higher ed, is about actually educating the parent and the people advising the young person, because it's not just about an apprenticeship, it's about understanding what are they passionate about and what types of jobs can you do in that sector. Because I'm an example of, I started as a hairdresser, beauty therapist, barber. Now I'm the Chief Academic Officer of TAFE Queensland. That's the story we have to be telling these young people, that it's not just this, it could be this. And I'm sure Leanne would agree, is with her university degree as well as her trade now, she has so much more scope of employment. And I think for me, it's what the group has said. It's about, you can't be what you can't see, is what we believe here at TAFE Queensland, hence why we showcase, celebrate. You know, if you haven't jumped on and seen, we actually have on our website Women in Trades, and we actually showcase people like Leanne. You know, example of it is a lovely lady by the name of Jenna Haley, who is a First Nations person, a mother of 4, and has a very similar journey to you, Leanne, in that she is actually a refrigeration mechanic in later, and she actually went on to win the Australian Apprentice of the Year. So it's about connecting and partnering with people like that, but also connecting and partnering with organisations like National Association of Women in Construction. And we do it, but we actually need to highlight it more and show those young people that are year 9, 10, and 11, wow, that I could do 10 different jobs in that particular sector. That's how I think we need to keep marching forward. We're doing it, but we need to do it more planned and more targeted in regards to that. And that's where I think we'll get more shift.
Thank you, Jenny. So it sounds like we need a plan, and it also sounds to me that we have, from what we've heard today, there are some people working on a plan. We need to reflect back, but also move a little more quickly. So there's quite a bit to be done, and this is now, so that's the end of the questions I was going to ask the panel. But this is the opportunity now for you to ask some questions. And I'm going to hand to Jo, because I know, Jo, you've got a question from the chat. So I think what we'll do is somebody might be really keen to answer this one. And then I'll pass to them.
So I will admit this is my question. But please add anyone to the chat. I'd love to have questions from the audience. So there was a recent body of research that emphasised the feminisation of higher education sector, that there are a higher number of women in study than men. And listening to Leanne's experience, I'm wondering, is that less indicative that women are doing more study, but more that women need to be more qualified to access the same opportunities as men? And if so, how do we address the industry standards, which is a double standard for recruitment, that women are having to do more to get in the door? Just resolve that big problem, please.
That's a great question. Thanks, Jo. So yes, I was noticing that too. Like Leanne said, I had to get all these tickets. I just kept getting tickets. And I can tell you, in my life, I started off, as a fashion teacher, and boy, did I have to get some tickets before I could even to a PhD before I could climb anywhere. So I'd be interested. Is there anyone who'd like to have a stab at that question? How do you feel about that? How do we address that women seem to need to be more qualified to access the same opportunities? Any thoughts?
I might just add to that question then. Is it women that need to have more under their belt to get the same opportunity, or is it females? Because there are a lot of younger females coming through the male-dominated trades and coming through TAFE, and they have the same amount of qualifications and tickets as all the others of their same age. So is it an age thing as opposed to a gender issue?
That's really interesting, Leanne. I'm not sure. Do you have a thought on that, or anybody?
I don't. So that's why I'm posing the question. I'm not sure.
So that's a question for our researchers to look at. Like, does it vary according to age, and is it something that's different depending on which generation you're from?
I would give it a go. I doubt it's age, or probably the two intersect, and the older you are, the more problems you have as well. But I think gender still plays a role. But that's my assumption without my opinion added. But I think what you said before, that women need more and more certificates and everything to get the same opportunities. We've heard that everywhere in all trades and all in senior leadership roles, particularly as well. You have to have so many, whatever certificates to be able to become a CEO or whatever. And I think one of the things that we say at Sage, because we work with organizations to remove the systemic barriers in organizations. And this systemic barrier is really and we often call it merit, but what is needed for a role what do you really need to be able to apply for the role? And I think the onus is not on women. Like, I want to remove that. We don't need to fix women. Women don't need more certificates than men. It's really workplaces. They need to really review their cultures, their policies, and their practices on what they're doing and how they are, in this case, actually discriminating against a woman who has similar, the same outcome, the same learning, the same certificate against a man. So and I encourage all workplaces that are here today to really look at their policies and practices and how they hire and how they can eliminate that discrimination that occurs there.
Thanks, Janine. Now, you said something very important there, and I could see the reactions went crazy. You said we don't have to fix women. And that's really important. And I can see there's a question in the chat there. How do we get men to march forward with us? For example, how many men are in the audience? Or I'm not sure how many men are in the audience, but that if there are some in the audience, they might want to know, well, what can we do to help? What should we be doing?
Do you ask me?
Yeah, well, you're off mute. We can
bring them along, I think, and that's why I mentioned before, consultation in workplaces is really important, and that doesn't mean consult with women only. It means consult with all employees, and I'm sure fathers and even young blokes, people in trades, they go surfing, they would all enjoy flexible working. I think we need to talk to them and tell them it's also about them. It's about fairness and equality. And we know that younger men coming up through the generations are more likely to take parental leave. They really want to take parental leave. They're also more likely to work flexibly. So talk to them and make it we are creating workplaces where everyone can thrive. We're not only looking at one part of the equation. That's what I would say.
Thanks, Janine. Anyone else care to make a comment on that?
May I jump in, Teresa? Just very,
Yes.
something we've talked about this week in our office is also about language. That we notice we swap between women and females and girls, and often female is used as a really arbitrary term. I don't like being described as a female. You know, I feel like I'm being David Attenborough when people use that. You know, yes, I am. But we also, how do we use that language, and how do we make sure it's being used in a way that opens doors, as opposed to enable people to be put into a corner as that's the female over there, we've done the right thing, versus these women are part of our community and our workspaces. Just something, you know, if we have a few minutes left, if there's any sort of thoughts about how we help people who have very specific sector languages engage in something that may be, you know, gender and sex, and how do we bring that out?
Thanks, Joe. Actually, there is some in the chat there about using some gender neutral terminology so that it's relatable. So when talking about parents, not mothers, fathers. And I think Janine's come off mute because she's got something to say.
I was just going to say, when I worked at the Workplace Gender Equality Agency, the mining sector did a lot of work in this space. And what they were doing was making it a work health and safety issue. And that went really well. So, for example, that's how mining work sites got aids, you know, on their work sites to help with heavy lifting. And that heavy lifting, what, you know, initially it was like because it would help women because they can't you know, carry that much. But at the end of the day, everyone needs aid for heavy lifting because, you know, everyone in the workplace is good if they have a healthy back. So that was a work health and safety issue, which really worked. So particularly with men.
Thank you. That's a great example of how if you know, improving some of those things in the workplace can actually benefit everybody. So thinking about it like that. And we're nearly at the end. And one thing I did want to say is that we haven't necessarily addressed the added complexity of intersectionality as in here as well in our discussion today. And that's because, you know, that could be a whole session on its own. So we've touched on a few questions today, a few issues, and we've heard some really interesting stories, and certainly Leanne's given people much food for thought with her story from the heart and her practical experience of what's just happened. So I think, you know, this is valuable conversation, but we all need to keep moving it forward. So hopefully there are some takeaways from today. I can see in the chat there's so much being shared. So I really thank you to all of everybody who's contributed to the chat and put some resources in there and suggestions and actions. And so now I would really like to say a big thank you to you all for joining us, but especially a big thank you to our panelists for a very insightful and practical discussion today. It was really, you know, I know we had a few little technical issues, but and including a little cyclone in Queensland, but look at that, we've made it through, and it was really a great discussion. So thank you. We have another big event coming up on Gen AI for ethical content and strategy at scale. So that's our next TAFETalks, and that's on the 19th of March. So I hope you can join us there. But thank you, Sharon, Janine, Jenny, Leanne, and Joe, and to all of you for joining us today, and hope to see you again soon on the 19th.